Hello there, and welcome to the Meaningful Stitch. This is a special episode, and Jackie, Rose, and I are going to be sharing with you the poems that we chose for our Poetry Advent, which we began on the autumn equinox, and which we did up to the point at which we were due to meet.
Yes.
So,
our first time meeting in person.
I know. So I'm currently at Jackie's home in Madison, Wisconsin, and so we thought we would sit out here and we would go through our poems.
Yes, absolutely. And we're outside. There'll be some noise sometimes, but we'll be okay.
We'll roll with it.
We're flexible.
So we're going to go through, I think, the first 12 poems of the Advent, and that will be shared on my channel, and then we're going to go through the next 12, and that's going to be shared on the Caddy Jack's channel.
Yes, and if you enjoy these, maybe we'll link below, because this is not our first Poetry Advent rodeo. We normally do the Advent, obviously, in December.
Yeah, and lead up to Christmas.
And then we flirted with doing a Valentine's Advent.
We did, but we've never quite got round to that.
But I think maybe this year.
I think we should.
Because then we have a little pause in December.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Like love poems.
Oh, that would be delicious.
Yes. And how it works is one of us starts, and then the other responds.
Yes, and we haven't chosen the poems beforehand, so this is something that we do in the process.
Yes, a call and response.
Exactly. So sometimes we pick up on a particular theme or an image or a metaphor or a poet even, but we never quite know what we're going to be choosing.
Right. And even before we start, you said something really beautiful the other day when you were asked, what does poetry have to do with knitting? And you said something which I want to cue up for you about the gap. Can you say that here? Because I thought it was so beautiful.
Yeah, well, I believe that poetry speaks to the human experience, and that is because the human experience is without words. You know, we really struggle to say sometimes what it is that we are experiencing and what we're feeling. And I think that's what poetry does so well, because it's always gesturing towards that gap, that difficulty in languaging what we're actually moving through. So we have the words that we are using, and we have the meaning that sits below that, and then there's this kind of place of slippage. You know, there's this opening up between the words that we use and the thing that we're referring to. And I think what poetry does so well is it exists in that gap. Yeah, so that's why it's so evocative, because we can read a poem and feel that it's speaking to our experience because it's moved across that space. And I think that knitting really allows us to do that as well, because knitting is formed partially of the yarn that we're using. You know, we're obviously creating these stitches using our needles, but it's also formed with space. Yeah, it also contains lots of gaps in the fabric. You know, the loops within the loops as they connect to create the rows and the stitches. And so I think that knitting really kind of is a fabric that really holds our human experience, you know, that we are partially always living in that gap, and we're always looking for ways in which to express it. And I think poetry allows us to express it, and I feel like knitting allows us to do that also.
Expressions without words. Yeah. And poetry is a tool that uses words but says things in a way words cannot.
Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. And just in case, I wanted to say, because if I were viewing, I would be wildly distracted by what we're wearing. So that you can actually focus on the poem.
Excellent.
Can you tell us about what we're wearing?
Yeah, so we are wearing our Gallus scarves, knitted in Lamb & Kid, Diamond Lane, Birdie, Held Double. We have some of the same colours. So
what colour? Oh, gloaming.
Yeah.
So this is actually gloaming. So gloaming, which is, you taught me that word.
Oh, yes, I would have, because it's a Scottish word.
Exactly. Can you tell them what gloaming?
Yeah, the gloaming is the point, it's twilight basically. It's that moment where the sun has just sunk below the horizon and there's still that kind of half light that is, coating the landscape, and it's just kind of settling down, almost like a veil of darkening light. And that, I would say, is the gloaming.
Yes, so we have gloaming in common, and we have Dean.
Yep.
Which Dean is my favorite color.
I loved working with all these colors, but that was a very special one.
Yeah, Dean. I kind of want Dean up on my face. Yeah. I'm like, Dean, what are you doing down there? Come closer. So how can I can just
drape it over.
Drape it a little.
Adjust it.
Sorry. Okay, sorry for that. We have Dean in common, and we have Cafe. Yeah, and look at Cafe.
I love Cafe.
Look at that
I know.
Okay.
Oh my
goodness.
Look
at that richness. So this is heirloom, and what do you have there?
This is rouge.
Rouge, okay. And then our final different color, I
have sweet briar,
and I have scout. But I know what I want to do. Look at,
I know. Can we just make an extra long Gallus scarf with
just,
all the colours?
And wrap it around us.
Maybe it'll go the whole distance between Madison and Edinburgh.
Oh, I love it. Yes, and it's such a cozy, wrappy scarf. So this is your first.
Yes, this is my first design. And I will take it off to show you.
Okay.
Oh, now the hair is all going all over the place.
Oh, yes.
It is knitted all in one piece, so there's no seaming involved. It's all done through short rows. And you kind of create these large parallelograms of colour. It's knitted for a DK weight, so you can use a fingering weight with a fluffy yarn held double, or you can hold 2 fluffy yarns double, or you can knit a single skein a single thread of DK.
Yes. And I saw lots of versions with beautiful tassels.
Oh yes, you can. There is an optional fringe, which I don't think either of us managed to get. We were very busy in the lead up.
This has not even been blocked.
No, mine's not been blocked either.
Yes.
No, we're on course there.
Yes, but it's just such a stunning way to use a single skein and put color together, and also maybe make one with a friend that's at a distance, and you can think of them when you wear it.
So yes, you would need 5 different colours, and there's one colour that's going to be repeated at the beginning and at the end. I've got rouge. It's my beginning and end.
Okay.
My mum actually chose that one for me.
Oh, okay.
She was over and I went, I don't know which one to start with, and she picked it up and she went, that one. So that's
perfect. Oh, good.
So there we go.
Yes.
I started with rouge and you started with Dean.
Yes. Well, and my friend Charlene knit this. She's a beautiful knitter.
Yes.
Okay.
And then yes, you can choose whichever colours you want to
and
go
some people have faded and marled and all
done
the
all
things.
lots of really interesting things.
So much opportunity, but the length is what's so. It's really got a perfect width and length. It's got great proportions.
Well, I thought, I'm seeing all of these wonderful long scarves on the catwalk, the runway, for the upcoming season. But as knitters, I'm not really convinced we really like knitting long scarves.
Right.
So how do we create a long scarf that's actually an enjoyable, fun knit? And so that's where this kind of came in, and it seems to have worked because lots of people say that they really enjoyed knitting it and would knit another, or have already knitted others. So.
And I would like to put a plug in for making a Gallus with perhaps your leftovers from 5 of your other knits, so that you have an almanac of your knitting, and then you could wear it with all of those sweaters.
Absolutely,
wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be amazing because one of the shawls that I use the most, I think, is my Fanta Stitch. And it's because it uses so many colours that are reflected in my wardrobe. And so even although it's like a 7-colour shawl, it's one of the most easiest pieces in my whole shawl collection to wear because it goes with almost everything. Yes,
and I think when I knit mine, I think the thing I want to keep in mind is for sure placing, like I love that this one's up by my face, and I wouldn't want to, I would put I think it's an opportunity too to put your comfort colors that you love up around your face, and then maybe
His
one that's
statement
more of a
ones.
risk
Yes.
started at the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to be intentional about knowing how it will how you wear it. And then the final thing that I just want to say is the other version of what you could do, which is what I plan to do, is knit a sweater in this color because it's in here, and I mean, and an ensemble, is just within our abilities as knitters.
And interestingly enough, we were just saying yesterday, because we were at a really lovely little place and we were having a very deep and wonderful conversation about knitting, and we were saying, what is the colour that you didn't know suited you until you knitted with it?
Right.
And we both said,
yes,
this color.
We did. Yes. So gloaming.
Yeah, it's stunning.
Yeah. Well, very good.
There you go. That's all the knitting.
That's the knitting
Now portion. So now the poetry portion.
Yes. And you started us off this year.
I did. I went for day one, mostly because when we looked to see like who would be doing what day, the last day was going to be a travel day, a big travel day for me. So I decided if I go first, then I don't have to figure out a poem for the travel day.
Yes. This Advent, I was traveling during it too, so it was fun because, like, I literally some days would have to go to a bookstore to like go have access to poems. But it's remarkable how it all works out.
Well, we have another story about that, but we might save that for the next.
Absolutely.
Next part.
I think so. And then the other thing I guess I wanted to say is at the bottom of this video there'll be a Google Doc, and it is a link to a transcript of all the poems, so you can follow along. We're reading off that Google Doc right now.
Just in case you're wondering where our eyes keep going, that's where it is.
Yes. But our thrill about the Poetry Advent, and this video in particular, beyond the conversation and bringing the poem off the page, is bringing the poem off the silent page and giving it voice. So, and what a treat to give a poem voice through these lips. Yes.
Well, do you know, it's something that I always used to tell my students at university whenever we were doing poetry, is that poetry is meant to be read. You know, poetry is not meant to live silent on the page or trapped in the pages of a book. It is meant to be spoken. It's meant to be, you know, that's why we have rhythm. That's why we have rhyme. That's why we have
songs.
Cadence. And they are absolutely songs, yes. So they're supposed to be heard.
It's like not wearing your knits, not reading your poems out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, some poems are super visual, and it's like there will be an E.E. Cummings in here that just see the shape of the poem is important, but many of them it's to hear.
Yes, absolutely.
To hear. And then, I'm sorry, I just need to say one thing. I find it so joyous, too, to read and to encounter the line breaks. And sometimes you just move right through a line break. And sometimes, and you'll find with me, sometimes I decide to repeat lines, and I feel like that is my prerogative if I want to as the reader.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's like deciding that you want to tuck your sweater in or leave it out. But anyways, okay, so here we go. This was our lead up.
This was day one, and this is a poem by William Stafford, and it's called You Reading This, Be Ready. Starting here, what do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor. What scent of old wood hovers. What softened sound from outside fills the air. Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lift this new glimpse that you found. Carry into evening all that you want from this day. This interval you spent reading or hearing this, keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now, starting here, right in this room when you turn around?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I chose this poem I knew I was going to start with, because it felt like, I don't know, it just felt like the opening to something, like to be ready. And it's an invitation into a quality of experience, and that was actually what I was hoping for this whole trip, you reading this now, be ready, start getting yourself ready, start planting your intentions, start cultivating the values of which that you want to experience as you move through this amazing opportunity to fly over the Atlantic and meet one of your best friends. It's an incredible opportunity. So yes, and then within all of that, one of the things I've really noticed is this feeling of time moving very quickly. So this invitation to carry this into evening, all that you found today, and what better gift to the world than the breathing respect that you carry with you, for the right now. And it's like, okay, well, this trip is going to be over before I know it, so I need to slow it down. I need to be present with it. I need to, really celebrate and cherish the gift that is right now.
Yeah, you said the line for me that's the heart of the poem. Will you ever bring a better gift for the world? Just than bringing yourself and your presence. I think it's a different way of being. If the way you are with this poem is inviting you into a different way of being that includes you and others and mystery.
Yes. And
it's outside of control. And it reminds me very much too, this, I might have told you this story before, but a dear friend of my father's, when my father was in hospice and dying, lots of guests would come and friends would come and people would fly in to see him. And it was always this prayer, let me say what needs to be said, or let me be present, let me, and I had to pause, like this poem said, and just kind of let me surrender and be a tool of what's needed here. And I think that's this poem as well. And it's practice. I mean, this one, you could read it every day.
Yeah.
Yes. Every day. And to really recognize that each of us has that capacity to be a gift to other people, and to ourselves.
Oh, I think I do want to read it every day now.
Yeah, right. Instead of, I think we so are encouraged to live in desire of what we don't have or what we want or what our plans are. And it really is a counter perspective to be present for what is.
Yes.
And a real opportunity to dive into the richness of that. Yeah. So thank you for that.
I love that. Yes.
That was beautiful. Okay. Oh, and I feel like this is E.E. Cummings, and you'll want to see this one too. And E.E. Cummings, as you guys know, plays with line breaks and breaks up words so much. So this one's beautiful, is the unmeaning of silently falling everywhere is now. So I have to read it again. And I might even lift up my thing and show it to you on my screen so you can see it. Right? Did you see the shape of that? And I think it's so much about the shape of the poem looks like this falling silently. It has so much movement. So beautiful is the unmeaning, silently falling everywhere is now. All that did for me, I don't need to explain it, is say, yes, Amy, I heard you. I'm on board. Let's do this. That was what day 2 was about.
Do you know what it makes me think of is we went on a beautiful walk yesterday through some wonderful woods, and it feels as though this poem speaks to that wooded experience, because as we're walking through, every now and again a leaf would release itself from the tree and it would fall down to the ground in silence, and it would just float through the air currents and then nestle softly on the forest floor. And that feels like this poem.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's interesting too, because like, what does it mean to be beautiful? What does beauty mean? It's not like it's literally saying that's not the right question.
Yes.
The question is to witness, to behold, and just to stand near and be with it, and not even have to comment on it.
Yes.
And so that's a reminder too that, and I think certain people in my life I'm learning that from. I also think it's a counter perspective to what is normal. What is normal is bubbling up with lots of words, lots of opinions, lots of commentary, and this is behold, witness. Let it plant on you. Let yourself receive, and let that receiving be enough. So which is, what are you receiving? The gift of now. This is truly what we have. So, yeah. Okay.
Oh, there you go. Because we were, because this is an Advent that unfolds over the course of a number of days, that we are not then necessarily always aware of which poem is coming next. So as we're like scrolling through, we're going, that one. So this one, Day 3, Nothing Gold Can Stay, by Robert Frost. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold, her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief, so dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. So those woods that we were talking about, there is something about the experience of the season of autumn that I think always puts you in touch with the phenomenon of, and the philosophy, I suppose, of impermanence. So nothing gold can stay. As we were saying about this gift of this moment, this greatest gift that we can show up with in this present moment, is it's being in active relationship with the now. But that is always changing. That is always in flux, and we're always having to let go of that in order to be able to embrace the next. And that's what I feel this poem reminds us of so beautifully. Is this quality of presence, of awareness, of perception, and then this invitation to keep letting go.
I have the deep privilege of sitting next to Amy while she's reading this poem and looking into her eyes and seeing that they are amber eyes full of little gold flecks, and realizing as she's reading too, it isn't just about autumn leaves turning gold, but the encounters that we have with people and being in their presence. When you really feel their presence, you get that, but there's no way to keep it.
No, because it's already gone.
And even just being with you today, or even us being here on this planet, Okay, Day 4. Oh, this is heart crane. Warning about heart crane. Heart crane for me is brilliant, dense. I need to encounter his poems again and again and again, and they knock my socks off. But I'll read it to you once, and it might, even when I read them, it takes me several readings to really get into his poems.
Okay.
But I wanted this one after you. This was what came to me. So this is Garden Abstract. The apple On its bow is her desire. Shining suspension, mimic of the sun. The bow has caught her breath up, and her voice, dumbly articulate in the slant and rise of branch on branch above her, blurs her eyes. She is prisoner of the tree and its green fingers. And so she comes to dream herself the tree, the wind possessing her, weaving her young veins, holding her to the sky in its quick blue, drowning the fever of her hands in sunlight. She has no memory, nor fear, nor hope, beyond the grass and shadows at her feet.
Mm.
Beautiful imagery.
Really, really.
Exquisite. And I think I put it in there because I just thought it was an amplification of what was going on in the beginning of our, and then it was taking it to a sensual, personal, erotic, intimate place, which I'm always loving to push up against and put that in the public sphere for whatever reason. And poets do it. And so we were in a poetry advent. I don't want to pull the poem apart other than I love, one of the things I love about reading poetry is it gets you to shift your perspective, and that flexibility and delight in seeing things differently. This has so much of that. So that is why I put it in there. Again, I thought it was just deeply personal, and that exists because we were getting ready. We were so busy. That exists at the same time. That like the more, there's a little bit of danger in here. There's a little bit of, and I think poetry addresses that you don't know what's next. You don't know what you'll be caught up in. You will be caught up in things, and you'll be swept away, and you'll come back. And I guess I just think, again, to stand in that and observe it. That's what the poet encourages us to do, is even when we're not understanding, to just be in and observing. Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of Zeus and his many lovers. You've got all of these stories of all of these women who were visited by Zeus and had this kind of profound erotic encounter that they were swept up in, and there was that sense of loss of self, and that sense of being ravished by nature, because it was always some kind of natural phenomenon that these women were in an active experience of, and that actually that was generative, because there was always a child that was born from the back of that, and that child would always be, half mortal, half immortal. So there was always that interweaving of the human and the divine, that was made manifest and material through that encounter. And that's what this poem really reminds me of, is kind of a poetic capturing of that.
Yes, wanting to be ravished, which, ravished is such a strong word, but still, we want to be moved and swept up in things and present for it. And in those moments, like this poem, there's no avoiding it. You are immersed in it, in your encounter with beauty, the divine, the present moment. You're there. Yeah.
I think the sort of in the centuries past, we would have spoken about that as being the sublime, when we had a moment which kind of bordered on terror, which actually lifts you up and out of yourself, unlike horror, which brings you down and into the body. Terror is something that pulls you up and out, and so you've got all these amazing kind of Gothic descriptions of encounters with the Alps, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and it's this kind of energy or
Mm-hmm.
emphasis that's being articulated through those narratives as well, because it's like this experience of the sublime. So it's a way of connecting with something that is greater than the self, and the need actually to surrender totally to that experience, so that there's almost like a sense of oblivion or a sense of loss of self,
Yes.
just momentarily, until we regain our footing, and the experience moves through.
Well, and I love that this poem is about desire, and I like the fact, like I like the invitation to contemplate your desires, to contemplate them yourself rather than to just have them triggered by other people and act out on them, because obviously we live in a time where our desires are, manipulated and exploited all the time, and to honestly, what do I desire? I kind of want to look up the etymology of that word. I don't know what sire. I mean, could sire mean to give birth to? And I don't know. Yeah. But it is a potent word.
Yes.
And to at least be aware of desire that is generated from within you seems like a good call to being a sensuous present being.
I love that, because it really asks you to be very present as a desiring subject rather than a desired object, which is unfortunately the position that many women have been kind of taught to perceive themselves in, as the object rather than as the subject.
That too, and I was actually thinking of like all of the marketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
and
absolutely.
then just feeling helpless because I want that and I want that. But what do you... And the desire is really intentionally created all the time to evoke that in us. What do we create desire?
Because the manipulative aspect is always about the creation of a deficiency and then the provision of something that will help you ameliorate that deficiency or fill that gap, that absence, or make that leap in some kind of way. And whether that's going to be the new lipstick, or whether that's going to be whatever it is, then hopefully there's that new skein of yarn. There's always going to be something which is going to fulfill that in some kind of way. But actually there's a way to engage with consumption, with buying things and purchasing objects of our desire that actually come from a much more authentic place, intentional place.
Yes,
absolutely.
And this poem for me, there's all this imagery of the boughs, in the sky, and all of that, but it ends. And she has no memory, nor fear, nor hope beyond the grass and shadows at her feet. And for me, sometimes that reminds me of how you can aspire but there you are. You're looking down at the grass and the shadows, and that can feel, it can feel sobering in contrast to all of that. Yes, you return to the ground. That's what she's returning to, the ground of her, I would say, being, the apple, down to the grass and the shadows.
Which is very comforting. I find that very comforting.
Yes. Okay, that was day 4, Heart Green.
Day 5, we had James Cruz.
Who I don't know him.
I think I encountered him on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Because quite often I'm finding my poems on Instagram, and so then I'm saving them in a folder, in a collection. And so whenever I'm finding new poetry or new poetry is being offered up, I pop it in the folder.
Nice. We also have hyperlinks on the Google Doc to either the poet's website or Poetry Foundation about them. So there's biographies. Okay.
Good for you. My goodness.
Well, the teacher.
You've been busy.
The teacher. Okay.
So this one is called The Leap. You could make the necessary change right here and now. Let all the old deadbolts of doubt click open inside you. Feel the doors swing wide as light pours into the sky above the maples, shining through that blue like stained glass. Isn't this moment just as sacred as the next? Is there any such thing as safety or comfort that lasts? Step out into the wet grass at dawn and see how the leopard frogs launch themselves out of our path, trusting the muscles of their own back legs to carry them, not caring exactly where they end up, as long as they can take the leap. I mangled that one a bit.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's like this tiny font.
Okay. But yes, I really like this one. I think because I felt as though I was taking a leap.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
for sure.
It's a leap across the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
And also a leap into the whole Rhinebeck bubble. You know, it's something that I have seen from afar for a long time, and I've seen it through the lens of lots of other people's perspectives and their words and their thoughts on it, and I hadn't experienced that for myself. I have been to lots of wonderful yarn festivals, but I hadn't been to this particular one. And so, and I think it is, Rhinebeck kind of holds a very particular place within the knitter's consciousness, you know? So
I describe it to non-knitters as the Super Bowl of knitting.
The Super Bowl.
I don't know if that's okay, but that's what I do.
Yes.
Just because it's, you know,
it holds that significance for us. But all of the logistics that you then have to create and organize and prepare and move through, all of the pieces that you want to wear when you're there, and all of the garments or the accessories, so all the planning starts to happen.
Sure.
You know, a lot earlier on. I'm sure
advance.
I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know here. But then the actual leap of like you organizing your visa waiver, you're making sure your passport's in date, you've got your travel insurance in place, you know how to get from the airport to your hotel that's been booked, and so all of these different parts, and then it starts to feel like, oh, this really is a big leap. You know, this is something that's been planned for, prepped for, and then, but actually at a certain point, you just have to make the leap.
Yeah.
You know, you just have to go through it, and you have to like trust. What does it say here? Trusting the muscles of their own back legs to carry them, not caring exactly where they end up, as long as they can take the leap. And I think that's really kind of where I was coming to, was going, the preparation has been put in place, the logistics have been planned. At a certain point, I just have to trust myself to be resilient and strong enough in order to make this particular trip and have this particular experience. And if I don't land where I expect to land, then actually I'm still going to be okay.
Gosh, and I'm so glad you took that leap. And the imagery for me, when I read your poem, it made sense given the context, and then it was like, oh, and it blended so well with all the past ones. So I was like, well chosen, Amy.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, okay. And then, yes. So day 6 was, and I don't think I have more to say on day 5.
No, that's fine.
Very well. Is Rumi. I feel like Rumi's been in every one of our Advents.
I think so. I think we would struggle to do an Advent without Rumi present somewhere.
Yeah, Rumi and Rilke.
Yeah.
Right. This one is unfold your own myth. Don't think. Quit pouring thoughts like kerosene on everything fresh and green, burning it to the root. Be a fool, drunk on love, soaked in awe, till dry reeds are sweet as sugarcane. A lion leaps out of his cage. A man leaps out of his mind. Bravery is delicious madness, not some circumspect, cagey thought, sly and ungiving. Why scheme for a morsel? Curb your insatiable hunger, and you won't be seduced by a trickster or reduced to being one. When greed groans, I act deaf. So, for sure, obviously I was responding to you, but I actually really enjoyed this poem this summer. because there is a certain amount of ego involved in being a knitter and wanting to hoping that people will like what you've made and hoping they'll respond but then you have to let that go. And notice it rise up in you, and you have to let it go. You have to, but for me, the mature thing that I've come to is that I'm not a bad person when I have thoughts like that. It's like those are natural human thoughts, and I can observe them and then dismiss them and say, and shift. It's always this intention. This is maturing for me, shifting out of just, what do I want? How do people see me? To, I actually want to be an expression of myself within a beautiful whole. And I want to fit into that beautiful whole as I'm intended, with grace, with mystery, with a sense of synchronicity, not with a sense of bludgeoning and bursting on and imposing myself. And if I'm in that place, I'm in a small place. If I'm in the place of abundance and plenty, then, I don't have to listen to the voices of scheming and plotting and planning. And so it's a different kind of leaping. It's leaping into, for me, it's the joy and waiting to find out what gives you joy, and I guess underscoring that. For instance, when I go to a yarn festival, I can't be like, I need to get that. It's more like, who knows what I will see, and let me just see what I see and see what delights me, and be open to that, and not go, because if I go like that, I have basically put this on my capacity to see, and I put that on my capacity to see other people too. So that's what this reminded me of, because obviously I was releasing patterns and hoping they would, do, I don't know. I mean, why wouldn't I hope that they would be well received?
They would do well. No,
but the fundamental responsibility is to make your creation, offer it into the world, and let it go.
Yes.
Let it go. And that, I've heard my mother say that for about 20 years now. It's not my responsibility if somebody likes it or not. It's my responsibility to make it.
Yes.
Yes. So that for me is what that is about.
I love that. I just love the idea of unfolding a myth. To start with. Do you know this unfold your own myth? Because like you say, it's not this kind of egoic bludgeoning. It is this allowing, this place of allowing, which does take the blinkers off and does let us see what is actually around us, and opens us up to more possibilities.
Yes.
And that actually life is much more interesting and much more exciting, I think, when we do that. I've always found that when I don't place strict structures around the form that something needs to take for me, then life will offer up something even more wonderful than I could have anticipated.
Yes.
Or even more appropriate, or, obviously life isn't wonderful all the time, but, that it will offer up exactly what I need in a way that I wouldn't have been able to have imagined it.
Yes.
And I feel if I imagine something too precisely, or I hold something too tightly, then actually all I'm really opening myself up for is disappointment. Because, it'll never really live up to the hard-edged crystalline form that I've then manifested for
Yes. And this call to be a fool, and the delicious madness. Well, I think what it's saying is, because there are helpful ways of thinking that have a smart goal, have a plan, and whatever. And that's true to an extent. But another way of being is to collaborate with the universe,
with the mystery.
which takes a certain amount of faith and needs to be reinforced by poets and people who are collaborating with the mystery in their lives.
Yeah,
Who
absolutely.
knew this would happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you think about this trip itself, you know, obviously there were a lot of plans put in place and tickets purchased for, you know, airplanes and, you know,
Exactly.
all of that. So all of that needs to go in and then accept, but then you take the leap,
Yes.
you know, and then you go, okay, well, this lion leaps out of its cage, you know. So or the leopard frog leaps,
Right.
Trusting its own back legs, and you go, okay, well, now we are in the realm of the mystery. Now we will open ourselves up and see, you know, how the universe wishes to show up and meet us in this moment. And is my heart soft enough, open enough, willing enough, receptive enough to be able to meet it on its own terms?
Yes. 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 Unfold your own myth.
Okay, slightly longer one. Day 7, The Conditional by Ada Lemon. Is that how we say her name?
I don't
Ada
know how
Lemon?
to say it, but I know she's a poet laureate.
Yes, she's wonderful.
Yes, she is.
So, say tomorrow doesn't come. Say the moon becomes an icy pit. Say the sweet gum tree is petrified. Say the sun's a foul black tire fire. Say the owl's eyes are pinpricks. Say the raccoon's a hot tar stain. Say the shirt's plastic ditch litter. Say the kitchen's a cow's corpse. Say we never get to see it. Bright future, stuck like a bum star, never coming close, never dazzling. Say we never meet her, never him. Say we spend our last moments staring at each other, hands knotted together, clutching the dog, watching the sky burn. Say it doesn't matter. Say that would be enough. Say you'd still want this, us alive, right here, feeling lucky. So I think that was really my response to this unfold your own myth, obviously. You know, this, okay, so if this is unfolding and I'm not going to be able to hold tightly to the form of it and prescribe exactly the events and the unfolding of them, how do I engage with this mystery? You know, then it all becomes conditional. You know, say this, say that, say whatever. You know, that I need to be fluid and I need to be responsive rather than reactive. I need to allow myself to unfold with this, and then I have to keep remembering how incredibly lucky I am for this experience, and just, you know, in a more general way, but yes.
Yeah. And there, I would say we will, the response versus being reactive, we could talk about that for a long time, but one of the things that we talked about recently was just mistakes and uncertainty and whatnot, and learning from that, and coming to a new perspective is a shaky, bumpy thing. And I've had encounters with people where I at first thought that, and then we allowed each other we misunderstood each other, and then we moved, but we gave each other the grace of, like, well, let me pause here, let me acknowledge what you're saying, let me hold this, and then shifted, and then grew so much in the encounter. But it started off like not what I expected, and in misunderstanding and whatever. But if you can hold a little bit of suspense around that and listen, there's such an opportunity there, such an opportunity. And I think that's very much something that, in a bigger framework, we're going through right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love these poems. These
Me
are great
too.
poems. Go us.
Yes.
For curating them.
This is funny because I put in, after yours, the one that you just did, it was hard for me to go, where
do I want to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I happened to write a poem that was like that, where I thought one thing and something else happened. So, and I wrote it like within days of this. This poem I'm about to read is by me, and it was written right in the middle of the Advent. So I put it in.
Perfect.
Yes. And it's funny because I'll read it to you, and it's always that, I do enjoy when I get to hear the story around a poem, but it doesn't make it the one meaning. Tonight we said prayers. Tonight we said prayers to an Aries moon, using our eyes like hands, lifting the sky's harvest to paper hearts, capillaries of joy filled with spilling purple night, while cranes shuffle down for one more story, the happy ending, to hold this moon, knowing she's the one love you'll never have to grieve. So if we're right here alive, feeling lucky, I'm going to go backwards and just tell you about the last line. I was walking. It was that, the full moon that we had during the Advent, and it was this big, I don't know.
Supermoon.
Thank you. It was a supermoon, and I was out in the country witnessing it. And I was along a lake. There were cranes nestling in for the evening, and it was absolutely gloriously beautiful, right? And I had all of my disappointments that I'd brought out to the field and the day with me, and the moon just, in comparison, they were nothing, right? And so, and I literally was just like, again, it's that question of how do you can't put your camera up there and capture a moon like that.
Nope.
It doesn't work. So the only thing I know to do is I can write about it. And and you think about how many full moons you even have left when you're 52, and the fact that I'm out there in the most beautiful, perfect experience of this one moon. And that, all the people that in my life who've already died, because I was thinking about my mortality, and I was thinking that the moon will go on being a full moon for people even after I'm gone, and that I have this full moon. I will always get to look forward to it. It won't die for me. I mean, it will someday in big, whatever time, but in my lifetime, it won't. It will always be there. And that's kind of lovely to think it will always keep you company. And so it was basically, this poem I wrote was that other poem just expressed in my experience which I didn't refer to my experience of disappointment, but I was very disappointed about several things at the time that I went out for this walk, and I didn't even expect really to see the moon. And, or I did go out there to see the moon, but I was waiting for it. And then I moved down a hill, and there it was, just like, so lovely. And so it is funny. I guess I feel like I will always feel the way the full moon floods you with love is such a universal feeling. And so when I'm seeing it and witnessing it, I feel deeply human, like I'm being the audience to the moon that the moon requires. And I'm happy to bear witness and know that I'm not alone looking at this moon. There are people all over looking at this moon and thinking how beautiful, how lovely with me right now. It's an event that I hold in common with my other human beings, but yet it's deeply personal and individual. So that was that poem.
I love it. I do. I really love it. When I read it, when you posted it, it felt like such an honouring of the Aries moon. Because the Aries full moon, well, basically we're seeing the light of our Libra sun reflected back on this moon in the opposite sign. And Libra is all about relationships. Libra is all about how we're connecting, the connections between self and other. And Aries, where this moon was, is about the self, it's about the individual, it's about the personal. And then the moon itself is the soul. If you think about the moon is the closest planetary body to us. So it has this deeply human aspect to it that is really kind of calling to the emotions, the emotional realm, and to the manifestation of soul. So yes, it just seemed like a really beautiful way to touch on all of those. This Aries moon that was just poised in the sky at that point, that you were connecting with as an individual, having an experience of your own soul that you're never going to have to grieve, because you're always present with your own soul, but then there's this collective experience that's happening at the same time. So it's being shared. It's something that we're all in relationship to.
I love that, and I mean, just because I wrote it. I thought it was fun for me to, what a dumb thing to say, but you look for images, and I did literally think, say you're really thirsty and you go to water and you cup it and you bring it to you, like the moon is that, it just feeds you in the same way, like there's this thirst and it feeds you, and when you see it in that light, it does, like literally, I feel like I'm very aware of my the aquatic system inside me, that I'm made of water. And I think we were looking at the water yesterday and saying friendship is like being the sky to someone's water, or the water to someone's sky. I mean, because I was walking next to a body of water as well, and seeing the moon and felt like a body of water inside me. The moon was reflecting inside me like that.
Yeah, the correspondence between the two.
Yes, yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Oh, here we go.
This is a very short one.
This is...
So this was day 9, and this is Fluent by John O'Donoghue. I would love to live like a river flows, carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. So... I don't.
Mic drop.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't even feel like it needs anything that kind of sits around it. It's just, it feels like it absolutely is speaking to your poem. This presence with the unfolding, this presence with the being in relationship to. This desire to be one with that which we are witnessing, the natural realm. So in so many ways I felt it touched on so many different themes that we had already kind of moved through, almost like a river, like we were just, it was almost like it's almost like a punctuation point. It's so short, but it feels like, okay, this is this is the river, this is the passage that we have been on together through all of these themes, through this experience of now, through this experience of being, of taking the leap, of unfolding the myth. So it just felt as though this was the poem that called to be placed in this particular position.
And this, I imagine for me, this is also one of the poems that is tattooed on my heart.
Yes.
This poem is a beloved poem, and it's nice to have it placed in some familiar treasure put in the context here too, of let's set our treasure down at this place setting. Oh, there it is.
A comfort. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And I was so surprised, this is such an aside, but when I went to put the hyperlink about John O'Donoghue, who's a philosopher and poet who is passed, but He's not in the Poetry Foundation, and he's published several books of poems. And I don't know what gets you to be
into the
considered
foundation.
Like that surprised me because I think he's so beloved. And
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
maybe I'll write them and go, hey,
Where's John O'Donoghue?
yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that. So how do you follow up that except with Rilke? And this is from Sonnets to Orpheus, and again, such a treasure of a poem. And I want to say, if you've watched the Poetry Advents before, I've talked about loving Orpheus and Eurydice, and I've talked about loving Rilke. And the shocking thing to me this fall was, and joy, is that I've read sonnets. There's several of these sonnets, like many, many, many of them. And I've encountered them in anthologies, but I've never sat down and read them like a story, 1, 2, 3, 4 after another. Nor could I ever read them all at one sitting. It's just too much. It would be like eating chocolates, it would just be too much.
Too rich.
But at the same time, I was so delighted. Oh, I have the opportunity to do this. So I started to read them like that, and what a joy it was. And this is one of those. So this is 29. Silent friends of many distances, feel how your breath enlarges all of space. Let your presence ring out like a bell into the night. What feeds upon your face grows might from the nourishment thus offered. Move through transformation, out and in. What is the deepest loss that you have suffered? If drinking is bitter, change yourself to wine. In this immeasurable darkness, be the power that rounds your senses in their magic ring, the sense of their mysterious encounter. And if the earthly no longer knows your name, whisper to the silent earth, I'm flowing. To the flashing water, say, I am. So everything that came before is here for that, and everything that I am experiencing now. When I typed this up last night, I was so grateful that this was waiting for me. Because we always want to be in a state of transformation, in a state of growth, in a state of becoming, in a state of encountering the mystery. And in order to be in that place, it takes some energy, it takes some framework to hold that. And so I think it takes the generosity of knowing, like the first and second poems, that just your very presence is enough. Your very presence is what's saying, yes, I'm present, I'm not imposing, I am not planning, I am present and willing, and I surrender. And I have to tell you that it's funny because I love that it's our Advent and we're not in an academic setting where it has to be all about, the poem itself. But it is about the poem itself. But I just want to say surrender is one of the best tools I have in my life. When I don't know what to do, that is what I do. And I say, let me come to understand, let me be what's necessary, etc., because I don't know. And I can't tell you how many times I don't know. And that, I guess I wasn't prepared for. Most of my rational upbringing was to know. Does that make sense? Yeah. And to be in the creative, artistic, spiritual realm is not to hold certainties, the same way. There are certain certainties, like the principles of flow, but it's not the same. So let your presence ring out like a bell into the night. That is aspirational.
Yeah.
But in this immeasurable darkness, be the power that rounds your senses in their magic ring, the sense of their mysterious encounter. That's my why. I don't know the terms, but like that is what I hope to live into. It's just, and when you've lost, even like the fact that it is to be expected that you will fall apart and not understand yourself anymore. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that
and for mirroring it.
Yeah. And so I'm just so grateful for the wisdom in this poem. It doesn't say believe this, say this, do this, belong to this, and it'll all be okay. It says you're already okay, and it's okay to fall apart. And then the line saying, what is the deepest loss that you have suffered? To acknowledge that we will all suffer losses, and those losses are part of what prunes our branches, etc. So that turns it into a cliche. Like what I'm saying takes away from the poem in a way. The poem itself is so beautiful to encounter. Yeah, like a full moon.
Absolutely. Do you know, one of the questions I sometimes get asked is, what spiritual or sacred practice I would recommend to people. There's so many different ways to practice anything. I always think practice is actually about quality of attention and intention. So actually a practice can be applied to anything. So I have a knitting practice because that quality of attention and intention is what I choose to invest particular actions with.
Yes.
But I think if you were looking for a super simple practice, I think it's delivered in the final stanza of this poem. So, and if the earthly no longer knows your name, whisper to the silent earth, I'm flowing. To the flashing water, say, I am. And I think those two statements, the I am and the I'm flowing, and the expression of that could form the basis of a super simple sacred practice that would carry you through some of these times of deep loss or deep instability or of
transformation,
dissolving, metamorphosis.
Absolutely. And it's just, of course we were intentional, but it is just beautiful. This is what happens to us. We see the imagery of the water and the moon without and within when we put these poems together. And what we're lucky for in the Advent is to go, it wasn't just Rilke who thought this. Look at all the poets, all the people who've encountered. There must be something to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
a human experience.
Yeah, a truth. There's a truth in here that we get to see.
Okay, day 11.
So you'll have to do a little of that.
Charles Bukowski. The Laughing Heart. Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Be on the watch. There are ways out. There is light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Be on the watch. The gods will offer you chances. Know them. Take them. You can't beat life. You can't beat death in life sometimes. And the more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. The gods wait to delight in you. So um, it just felt perfect to follow on from the previous poem. This I am, this I'm flowing, this, let your presence ring like a bell, and then the gods are waiting to delight in you. It feels invitational, it feels like an opportunity to show up fully as yourself. And I think, again, to bring it back to kind of what we were moving towards, which was this great knitting festival event, it can be challenging, I think, to show up more fully as yourself in these moments, because you are interacting with so many people, you're engaging with new social dynamics, so to allow yourself to fully show up as yourself without dampening down, I suppose, or softening any of those parts of yourself that you think might be unacceptable or not approved of or whatever, but just to be completely you. That felt like the invitation and the permission slip.
Yeah, I love that. Although even just listening, I'm just going to confess, listening to you say that, showing up completely as myself at a knitting festival doesn't even really seem possible. Because it's also okay to know that yourself is vast, and you will show up as true, a true facet of yourself, but just a facet.
Yes.
And to know that people have, every time you encounter someone, you're encountering something vast, and it holds way more than we can imagine for us and for the other that we encounter. But that you are marvelous. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody we met, that was the given. I'm here to say, you are marvelous. Yes, that's the goal.
Yes.
To treat everyone that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And you give that first. That's what you, at the start.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we engage from that place. Yeah.
But then prior to that, in the poem, there was all of this, and if you're not there, I feel like the language again was just very much like, listen, be patient, and you'll find it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. It's like, keep the fire burning, tend to the inner vital spark. Be on the watch. There are ways out. There is light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Be on the watch. The gods will offer you chances.
I love those lines. Yeah. Be on the watch. I
know. Like, so stay alert.
Yeah.
And again, that's what comes in when we remove those blinkers and we open up the possibility for the universe to enter in and meet us, rather than circumscribing exactly the means in which our life needs to hold something.
Yes, if we're not hustling, if it's already given that we're marvelous between each other and between us and our maker, if that's already taken care of, then we can, be on the watch.
We can be on the watch.
And let ourselves be witness to all that marvelosity or whatever it is.
I love that.
Yes. Yeah. So good. So good. And so my day 12 was one of these where I didn't have as many poems as at my disposal. So I'm going to read it to you, and then I'll tell you how it fit in. It was Robinson Jeffers. This extraordinary patience of things, this beautiful place defaced with a crop of suburban houses. How beautiful when we first beheld it, unbroken field of poppy and lupin, walled with clean cliffs. No intrusion but 2 or 3 horses pasturing, or a few milch cows rubbing their flanks on the outcrop rock heads. Now the spoiler has come. Does it care? Not faintly. It has all time. It knows the people are a tide that swells and in time will ebb, and all their works dissolve. Meanwhile, the image of pristine beauty lives in the very grain of the granite, safe as the endless ocean that climbs our cliff. As for us, we must uncenter our minds from ourselves. We must unhumanize our views a little and become confident as the rock and ocean that we are made from. So the juxtaposition of perspective, of peeling away all of the ways of seeing that this is what I expect, this is what is beautiful, etc., and recognizing that it is back to, what did you call it? The sublime. The sublime, and the fact that we are temporary, and to align with what is, again, I'm struggling. It's okay to struggle for that word, but what we know, what we use words like awe to describe, instead of, and it's okay. It's like our human minds are made this way. Our human minds are made like little mice. This is for me. This is mine. I want this. I don't like that, and again, I think that's just that maturing, like to know that those kinds of thoughts will be there, and to just go, oh, I'm doing that again. And I feel, so that's, to me, that spoke to expectation, and it spoke to time, and it spoke to, being witnessed not by opinion of the moment, but being witnessed by a granite rock that came out of an ocean that's millions and billions of years old, and just time, fleeting time, vast time. We are fundamentally creatures of time, and we think we're so important, and we are, and we aren't.
Yes.
So it's funny because it feels like a funny place to drop off our poetry advent. Drop it off a cliff, but that's. And please say any, but I don't know what you thought when I put that in there, but that was my day 12.
Yeah, I think I love this phrase, uncenter our minds from ourselves. We must unhumanize our views a little and become confident as the rock and ocean that we are made from. I love that. I really love that.
I mean, we are made from that.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me think of Roman Krasnarich's The Good Ancestor. He wrote this wonderful book about what does it mean to be a good ancestor, and it requires you to uncenter your mind from yourself. It requires you to see the time functioning in the way in which it functions, rather than our kind of very personal, intimate relationship to it or perspective of it. We need to create this grander perspective. So there's something that came before us, there'll be something that comes after us. And so, to use Mary Oliver's poem in the way that she completely didn't intend, what are you going to do with this wild and precious life? And I think, this is the invitation, isn't it? It's like, okay, well, it's about allowing ourselves to be fully witnessed by that which came before and that which remains permanent in as much a way as anything can be permanent, something that will outlive ourselves. So, like, for example, the moon, but also we can still do things that will have some form of longevity. There's something that lives on after ourselves. And I think we get that when we decenter ourselves, when we unhumanize our sense of place, our sense of time, our sense of nature.
And I don't think it's a virtue. I think it's experience, teaching you that over time. I think it's a normal progression of mature aging too, because in terms of like, you're supposed to be fully focused on yourself, and then you eventually are able to let those go and pass them on. I mean, I think in the second half of life, that's what's asked of us.
Yeah.
And but it's okay, completely okay, that it doesn't come naturally, and that you need to like read poems and be reminded of it and read books like that to be, because if you just let what's flooding along in our media market, you won't really get that message. The message will stay pretty much into, whatever.
Like in an astrological perspective, Saturn is considered to be the archetype that allows us to move through maturation. And so Saturn will complete its orbit every about 27, 28 years. So if you might have heard of a Saturn return, it generally kind of comes around that age when you're waking up and you're going, oh my goodness, this is my life I'm living. You've moved through your 20s, most of your 20s, and it's stepping across that threshold into your 30s. And so you start to have that sense of time that you didn't necessarily have before. And then, of course, then your second Saturn return will come close to around about your 60th birthday, and then you have that another kind of maturation cycle, kind of. And every time a cycle concludes, it's like, there's been the fruition, there's been the rooting, there's been the flourishing, there's been the ripening, there's been the fruition, and then it's moving back to the seed. So that moving back to the seed occurs at the end of that cycle before the next one begins. And it feels as though that some of what's being gestured towards in this, with the granite rock is the material that's symbolized by Saturn. So it is this kind of being sort of ground by life, or being met by it in such a way that it's like as the ocean meets the granite, over a long period of time, they make an impression on each other, they meet one another, they create form together that didn't exist before. But it's not something that can be done like that. It's a long process.
Right. It reminds me of our reading lives. And if the poetry was the river and we are the granite, it does impact you. I love that. And it helps you weather awe, but truly, and disappointment, because both of those things are natural parts of our experience. But it's nice to not have it all have to rise up spontaneously out of your own psyche. It's nice to rehearse it through reading a poem and reading. And I would just like to put in a plug in the middle of this Advent because we always are trying to encourage people to read poems and just open books up to any old page. And the only question you need to ask is, does this speak to me?
Yeah.
And just, if it doesn't, then go to the next one.
Yeah. It doesn't mean anything that one didn't speak to you.
Yeah, not at all.
You just move on.
Exactly.
There are many poems out there.
Yes. So, gosh.
So we're so glad that we've been able to share with you the poems that were speaking to us at that particular moment, and which I think are still very much speaking to us, obviously, by the fact that we've now spoken about them for almost an hour and a half.
I feel so fortunate that we planted those poems in each of those days, and then we can have the days come back like mirrors and look at us now. And so I just, if you're watching this, please, find your poems and keep a place for them in your life. If there's anything in here that that you enjoyed,
Yeah. Absolutely.
We welcome you into finding them, and we know many of you do. But yes. So thank you so much for hosting me.
Oh,
it's fun to be hosted on your virtual channel
while you're at my house.
Yes. And we'll we'll have some frolicking through Madison and some food and some fun, and then we'll come back and do day 2 over on Caddy Jacks.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, please tune in for the next 12 poems.
Yes.
And we will share them with you and our thoughts there.
Yes.
But yes, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you really soon.
Okay. Bye.